Gentlemen, welcome back to Administrative Results. Today we're going over the SIG MCX SPEAR, chambered in 6.8 by 51mm or 277 Fury. I'm really excited because I've wanted to go over this gun for quite a bit now, seeing that the US military has saw it fit for adoption for its infantry and its combat arms roles. Fascinating. Time is a flat circle.
Someone once told me, time is a flat circle. Everything we've ever done or will do, we're gonna do over and over and over again. Some egghead at the DoD thinks it's a good idea to implement a battle rifle to infantry in the age of an intermediate cartridge. A nerd's hunch turns out to be wrong, while our boys paid the price in blood. Lessons are learned. The dust settles, years go by, and then some egghead at the DoD thinks it's a good idea to implement a battle rifle to infantry in an age of, well, time's a flat circle.
Did you know that on average in the Vietnam War, it took over 50,000 rounds of ammunition to inflict one casualty? Fascinating statistic that I came across. But what does it have to do with the SIG MCX SPEAR? Well, let me cook, buddy. Because today on Administrative Results, we're going over, well, the MCX SPEAR, you guessed it, by the title, thumbnail, and everything else. Build drill, two platforms. The AR-15 platform. That was terrible on my part. 143, look at the pattern. It's like a constellation star going over. 2 alphas, 3 Charlies, 1 Delta. Let's see if we all can't get some alphas going. I feel embarrassed. 149, did I only fire 5? No, I fired 6. Okay, so it's all out. If this is the newest one, all alphas 149. Let's see what the MCX SPEAR can do. We'll grab some fresh paper. Let's build drill this week's worth of groceries and ammo. Eesh. 259. Much slower. All alphas. First attempt on it. This is literally some of the first shooting I've done with the gun besides zeroing. We can do better. When you up that gas setting, it definitely gets a little bit more. Actually, I can't really tell the difference between. Ah! Oh. 166. Faster, but I definitely know more inaccurate. Yeah, we opened her up. Of the 6, 3 Charlies. Do a quick video.
Are you doing build drill again?
Yeah. Just kidding. I will say it's interesting to see the United States adapt a battle rifle again for general infantry use. It's kind of like that whole time is a flat circle thing, where if we rewind the clock at the turn of the 20th century, the adaptation of the M14 and its short-lived service life, when troops got into Vietnam and the rubber met the road, it was quickly kind of discovered that they wanted more ammo, gun was kind of heavy, and then despite Eugene Stoner's M16 having its teething problems, once it was worked out, it seemed that it was like a much better trade-off for that style of fighting, and the big green weenie boys would continue to use 5.56 fed weapons, I guess up until now, or recently. And I mean, and 5.56 is still in service, so that's a thing. But now with battle rifles, you carry less ammo in general. I mean, you could probably stack on a bunch of rounds, but you're gonna feel that weight pretty quick. And why this is important is because if you look at gunfights and how they kind of play out amongst troops in a combat theater, it's typically keeping heads down, suppressing, maneuvering, allowing you to get the edge on the enemy and get those shot placements, or the idea of locking them down in place so you can use other assets like your air support or your artillery, so you can absolutely obliterate those guys while they're locked into place because they can't move now because of your massive amount of ammo you're carrying on deck. 5.56 isn't going to be as lethal in general terms of ballistics as, say, a 7.62 by 51, or even in this case a 6.8 by 51, where this 6.8 is apparently just cooking and it's a real nasty round. But the trade-off is, of that 5.56, you can carry way more of it. And it's generally a much more wieldy gun. Like getting shot placements when people are within that appropriate distance is a lot easier. Now, this whole development and how we got here came about thanks to the NGSW program, the Next Generation Squad Weapon Program, I suppose. The government bureaucratic machine loves its programs.
In 2017, the U.S. Army launched the Next Generation Squad Weapon Program, or NGSW, aiming to replace the M4 carbines and M249 light machine gun with more advanced firearms. SIG XM7 responded with the MCX SPEAR, modular rifle chambered in 6.8 by 51mm, or 277 Fury. On April 19, 2022, after 27 months of rigorous testing, the Army awarded SIG XM7 a 10-year contract to produce the XM7 rifle, formerly known as the XM5, and the XM250 automatic rifle along with a new 6.8mm ammunition. The initial delivery order was valued at $20.4 million for weapons and ammunition testing, with the overall weapons contract having a ceiling of $4.7 billion, and additional $2.7 billion was allocated for the XM157 fire control system. By late September 2023, the first batch of XM rifles and XM250 automatic rifles were delivered to a platoon in the 101st Airborne Division for user testing. The initial deployment occurred in March 2024 with the 1st Battalion, 506th Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division. Subsequent field tests were conducted by National Guard units, including the 30th Armored Brigade Combat Team in June of 2024. Additionally, in February 2025, the Army broke ground on a new 6.8mm ammunition production facility to support these weapons. To summarize, the big goal of this whole program is to increase hit probability and lethality of the projectile out to greater distances.
So, serious money was thrown at this thing along with the other weapons in the program, and I'm sure more tax dollars will follow as time goes on. Now I kind of want to get to my general thoughts on the gun. I would say if you've watched this channel for a bit, you know that I am a simp for battle rifles. Doesn't matter if it's World War II M1 Garands or all the way up to the SCAR 17, I like my full-size cartridges in a semi-automatic platform. I think it's fun, thrilling, and exhilarating. In the American world of AR-15s, a battle rifle stands out. Even if it's an AR-10, I think it's a good time. Something about just having a big old beefy 30 cal round on deck feels all-American. Feels like you got the horsepower of a V8, an American muscle car, as you drive home to your trad wife that's making you apple pie, and you're gonna watch some baseball. I like that. My love of battle rifles aside, I am hesitant to say if this thing will actually pass the test of time. But we're gonna get to more on that later in the video. What I do wanna go over is the pros and cons of the stuff I enjoy about the gun. Now, before we even get there, I gotta tell you how I got the gun. And that's all thanks to this video's sponsor, Modern Warrior. Gentlemen, when it comes to protecting you and your family, you need the right tools for the job. That's why I want to thank this video's sponsor, Modern Warriors. You're a one-stop shop for all things tactical. They have a massive online selection of firearms, suppressors, and all sorts of accessories. Everything from high-end builds to everyday carry. This is impressive. They have 800 5-star Google reviews, and their customer service is top-notch. This is important. I do appreciate them helping me out and getting me this rifle because I've wanted to go over this gun for quite a bit of time. To me, this is important. It helps you know that there's no outside interested parties trying to influence how my opinion is on the subject. I appreciate Modern Warriors helping out this way. So I'd encourage you, go show them some love, check out their website. Also, quick disclaimer on your 10% discount when you go to check out. There are certain brands and products that are gonna be excluded. So be aware of that. All right, back to the video. Starting with the bad. I will say the weight is suboptimal, not the weight overall of the gun because it does fall into that good battle rifle weight when it's all loaded up. It's around probably 12, 13 pounds, it seems like, all kitted and fitted with a mag in there. The problem with the weight is the balancing. The front end of the gun is extremely heavy when you have the can, and now I don't have the XM157 optic, so I have to have another aiming device on here, and then of course we got a white light. But then the barrel is gotta be one of the thickest barrels I have ever seen on a small arm. Am I going crazy? Is there probably thicker barrels I've seen? Yeah, I don't know. That sounds so weird to say. But looking at this thing, you can tell it's a massive chonker. Now I get it, because it has to stand up to the like 80,000 PSI pressure of that round that's just cooking at Mach you. Now we're getting some rain. It's a rainy video. It's gonna get chilly. Another thing, 2 charging handles seems very excessive. I can see where they want the familiarity of the AR style charging handle. You have all that time and training of troops knowing it, but once you get rolling and say your gun runs empty, everyone just uses the bolt release to put in a new mag, and then charging the weapon is kind of like not that crazy. If anything, I'd probably get rid of the AR style charging handle because I do like the side charger. I think that's, you know, I like that design. It kind of reminds me of an FAL. It felt like a massive kind of pick one, like make up your mind. I would have been happy if they had the AR style charging handle. I could have gone with the side charging handle. It's really, I mean, you'll figure it out. I mean, I will say I have had times, and there's even video of me shooting an AR-15 where I would go for not the charging handle or the bolt release, which I should have gone for the bolt release. This was after shooting a video on the PTR, PDW, where I was doing a lot of like the HK slap reloads, and my mind in lizard mode went for something like that. And then I was like, oh wait, AR-15 bolt release. So it does happen, but in the grand scheme of things, I feel like it's not that big of a deal. Like you would develop your muscle memory and or figure it out on the fly. Could it be one of those things where milliseconds leads to your death? Sure. Violence is like an infinite simulator of what if, so don't think about it too much, I guess. So the rail I got on this is different than what I've been seeing of the other more military variants of the rail. Not the hugest deal, but it kind of bums me out because I wanted the option for the QD like they have on those rails. Granted, this is like the civilian version, I'd assume, because well, obviously it doesn't have full auto. Maybe that's just the rail they're doing now or the rail they're sailing, so it kind of bummed me out. Like I like the idea of them having the, I think on the other rail, they have like the actual riding of the gas settings, which could be nice when you're like really tired and you're like, oh wait, which way does this go? Not the biggest deal, but it's a complaint I had. So I'm lodging it. So on the stock that the gun came with, and I swapped out this stock, the LWRC stock from the Magpul stock, because I like this stock more. On the stock tube, I will say there is no numbering for your stock positions. Could that be this particular civilian model? Could that be on the military rifle? I don't know, but it seems like for how much this gun costs that it's going for, you would think like the numbers on the tube could be a no-brainer. Just easy little things that you don't have to think about, like, wait, which setting did I have it at? Did I turn it over and like count, like, wait, there it is. I mean, most of these stocks have cutouts now. You can see that numerical measurement for your length of pull. That would be nice. Yet again, is it a big deal? No, but the little things start to add up. This one's more of a lazy person trait. It's having to learn the ins and outs of a new weapon system. Granted, the government doesn't pay me to carry a gun, but it's one of those things like putting myself in the grunt shoes of like knowing the ins and outs of your M4, all the nuances, you know, taking that thing and putting it back together blindfold, having to relearn that, you know, kind of an inconvenience if you're being lazy, but if you just attack it and have a good mindset, you'll figure it out pretty quick. So here's what it is. Something I thought of. Most of those dislikes came from just kind of looking at the gun before shooting it, and then after shooting the gun, got more experience on what I like and didn't like. And I will say the front end heaviness of the gun came into play on the offhand shooting. Man, you feel all that weight in your support hand. You know, with a bipod, say if you hit the prone, you can probably get some good shots and good shot placement. When you're offhand and shooting in positions, you know, on uneven terrain, trying to find like a good way to get a good stable platform, that front end weight does come into effect. And like the athleticism with the gun of like, say, okay, you hit the prone, popping back up, all that weight is on the front end. Whereas with an AR, you can pop up one-handed pretty easy. Popping up with this feels a little bit more taxing. I'm not saying like I can't do it. It's just that feeling is much more strenuous. I know the counter to that is like, well, hit the gym. And it's like, buddy, I do hit the gym. Like I work out, I can lift some heavy weights in relative terms. I'm not like that one Australian freak show that's like zerchering 495 pounds like it's funny. But as far as like average dudes go, I feel like I'm above average as far as weightlifting. Maybe I'm not, maybe I'm actually a weakling. Recoil impulse. You know, it's not like the most stout recoil I've ever felt, obviously. I've shot like Scott's 4-bore rifle and that thing's insane. But for what you're trying to do with the gun, the recoil feels a bit more stout. So you already have a front heavy gun, then you have a recoil that could be a little bit more jarring in the sense of follow-up shots. Right now we're just running a 4x L-can. I'm always punishing myself trying to shoot it out to distance, whereas I'd rather use like an LPVO. But if I was using an LPVO, I could see my sight picture getting disrupted a lot easier on that much more magnified setting. Okay, pause. I want to elaborate on the recoil some more. I want to add some context. I have yet to shoot a MCX SPEAR chambered in 7.62x51. I've only shot it in 277 Fury. That being said, when it comes to the recoil, I'm basing that off of the best shooting 7.62x51 gun I've shot in terms of recoil, and the 6.5 Creedmoor gun that belonged to 110 SAS, Cody, when he brought his SR25 out chambered in 6.5. I was kind of comparing against those. Those two guns, and the SCAR 17 with the muzzle brake, which is kind of an unfair comparison to that thing, in terms of recoil, much better, and you can just rip those things, and it's impressive for the cartridge size. Compared to that, the recoil, of course, isn't terrible, but it's not great. And to me, trying to do like really fast shots and dumping targets, of course, you know, your distance to the target's gonna dictate probably how fast you try and go. And in theory, you could also play devil's advocate, like, well, does that matter if you're dumping like a piston hot cartridge that apparently is armor piercing into a bad guy, and it's just zipping right through him, causing him this crazy interior damage to his vitals and he's just dropped like a sack of potatoes in one round. Yet again, we are talking about the violence simulator where it's a never-ending what-if thing. I forgot to talk about this when we were out at the range, but I also have another complaint. It's this little thigh gap between the upper and lower receiver. I like it on women, not on my rifles. For whatever reason, this bugs the dog piss out of me. I don't like that, Sig Sauer. Sort yourself out. Sure, you maybe have some highfalutin engineering reason. Don't care. Oh, we got ourselves a malfunction. Can't waste that bullet. I actually think I covered most of my dislikes. Now we get on to the good stuff. Contact! So on to the good. The gun seems to have like a good lifetime friendliness to it with all the swappability. Like how you can swap the barrel, you can swap the side plate. I can't remember the name, I'm sorry. Like it's like the thing right here. You can swap this thing out for like wear and tear. On paper, it seems like a good lifetime gun if you're gonna run a train on this thing. Through shooting it a lot. Now, I was watching Ian McComb's video on it where he was talking about, in a combat setting, is the gun going to reach the wear and tear point to where you start to really dip off in that accuracy? In the instance where the gun may get damaged in a combat role or the amount of fighting you'd actually be seeing once you get to that theater. So there is that, but yet again, it's like the violence of things is a what-if simulator and there are infinite scenarios, so. But I think you have to try and stick with the most probable, which goes on the modularity of the gun, which I think is nice, and the simplicity of like swapping out barrels for calibers, which I think is also another nice feature. So it's like, okay, well, we may not have a bunch of 6.8 or 277 Fury on deck, but we have millions and millions of rounds of 7.62x51. I actually really like the safety selector. It's a very crisp selector. Now, it's not a 45-degree throw, which is my preference, but for what it is, there's like zero slop, nice and tactile click, Tactile, is that the right word? Screw it, we go with it. I like it, it feels good. I will sing the trigger's praise. For a military trigger or, at least the gun I got, if the same trigger, it's a damn fine trigger for a gun like this to be issued to like standard general infantry. Like the mil-spec triggers of the AR-15s that you'd be used to, pale in comparison to this thing. Like this thing is way better. I like it a lot, I'll give him that. I'm happy for that because I feel like all the little things start to add up where a good trigger can help with the fundamentals of marksmanship. Even though I myself am obviously a terrible shot. The weapon all around is ambidextrous, or I like to say, ambidextrous. Fellas, am I right? I know it makes you guys mad, but I like the ES suckers, which I think should be the standard in today's age of weapons technology with all these new guns coming out. I like the overall user-friendly to all, even the freak shows of the lefties. I like that. I respect my lefties, but overall, you can use it from each side. I appreciate that. Though, I never do like the bolt latch when it's on the other side of the gun. It's always inferior to the bolt catch or bolt release on the proper side of the gun. Most of the time, unless it's like got the paddle, okay. The suppressor did a great job getting absolutely zero gas back into the face. Someone that shoots guns a lot, I like not breathing in those gases because I don't want to cut my lifespan any shorter than it's probably already going to be. It's a plus. Overall, I will say the gun is very sexy. It passes the aesthetic vibe check. There's all the curves and lines in the right place. It reminds me of the SPEAR LT, whether it's in 5.56 or 300 blackout, like we're on that gun, I think, okay, that's a good looking rifle. If we were to say that the SPEAR LT was a woman, it would be like a bikini model, right? A beautiful, elegant looking female with all the curves and lines that are appealing to the male brain. If we apply the same logic to the SIG SPEAR MCX, it will be like a bikini model with all the curves and lines in the right places, but she is obsessed with hitting legs, and she has thighs that will crush your head with great ease. You may enjoy that analogy. I'm proud of that one. You also may unsubscribe now. Just like the negative, those are most of the things I came up with before shooting the gun, just kind of like vibing out with it. Doing some dry fire, stuff like that. Now, after shooting the pros, it seems that the major benefit is just the round itself having all that ass behind it. Things cooking. Now, I don't have the AP rounds, which I hear are pretty gnarly, which I'm kind of jumping the gun in the script, but as far as my hearsay goes, from what I've heard of guys that have seen those AP rounds in action, is that they're absolutely zipping through steel. Not just like plate, like armor you would wear, but like target steel that can withstand a lot of abuse, like they're cooking right through it. And if that's the case, then dang, that's pretty nasty because you have some very interesting implications. Because body armor is now so prevalent, like I've even heard of guys in the Middle East getting like Temu level 4 plates or something like that. So I could see where they're coming from, but yet again, there could be that survivorship bias with wearing body armor where it's like, well, yeah, you want to have it, but you know, you could be taking hits in the extremities, yada, yada, yada. So. Oh my. One thing that I thought about more when it comes to the pros of the gun was the mag that it came with. Now it's a pro and a con because these mags, to me, to you, the civilian consumer, are kind of expensive. Well, they are expensive. It's like what, 50, 60 bucks something per one of these mags. Not really far off brand if you look at like, say, SCAR 17 mags also being expensive. But with this one, at least like AR-10 style mags are compatible with it. So I already had like AR-10P mags, which were far cheaper than this. That being said, when it comes to running a battle rifle and sometimes even 5.56 P mags, I am not the biggest fan of those as opposed to metal mags. Like P mags are prone to break a little bit more up by the lips and the back over here. And when you're stacking them into pouches, they're a little bit fatter. So you may have a pouch where you're like, yeah, I can fit 2 of these mags. And then you try and fit like 2 of the P mag, say AR-10 mags in there, and it becomes much more restricted. That may not be the case for all the pouches, and it may all depend. I know on my harness that I sell on the website, I'm able to tightly fit in 2 AR-10P mags, but it's not as nice as, say, slimmer metal mags. So something to be aware of. Battle rifles and load-bearing gear. Time is a flat circle. Now moving on in the video, I will say I want to attack this next portion and give you a disclaimer that I am just a dude on the internet. Take everything I say and do with a grain of salt. I may not know what I don't know. Now I will say that issuing this rifle to infantry is a bad idea, kind of, like a mass issuing of the rifle. Now I believe the goal of this was for the rifle to really dominate greater distances and spaces and increase hit probability and lethality at those further distances. You know, really dominating spaces of 600 yards, really denying the enemy the leverage of trying to, get closer to you. How does that play out in theater? To me, it feels a lot of situation dependent. Like right now we're out in Arizona, right? You can see in the backdrop massive sight lines, but sight lines can also get closed out. Say at nighttime where there's more darkness to cover you despite thermals and night vision, you can still use that concealment. Anyway, I think a lot of that hit probability out the distance is going to come down to that optic. I have 0 time with that optic. I have never looked through it. I have not seen it in person, but from what I have seen of it, it looks pretty sick. That XM157 optic, at least that's the last time I remember what it's called. I don't know if it's got like an update or not, but with all the ballistic calculator, the IR, the rangefinder, like that stuff is sick. To me, it feels like that's where most of that juice is. There was another attempt, back in the 80s where the military was like, all right, we want to increase hit probability like 100%. So they had the whole ACR program, the Advanced Combat Rifle program, where they spent hundreds of millions of dollars to pretty much come to a conclusion like, oh, let's just throw a better optic on the M16. And to me, it's kind of like what this may be, where now we got a rifle out of it that got issued, whereas we got those other rifles back in the day, but they didn't really get issued, so they kind of went the way of the dodo. But with this, we got a rifle out of it, and we also got a new optic. In my mind, it's like you could have just issued ARs with that optic and had that option. Yeah? Like if I was a betting man, I'd wager we get into some conflict, troops show up with this rifle, they really discover the pros and cons, where they like it, where they don't like it. And the sad part about that is you're gonna learn the hard way, like you're gonna learn and pay the price of that knowledge and blood. And it's kind of like a sobering thought, I would say, but they're gonna learn where the gun shines and where it doesn't. Like to me, off the top of my head, I feel like I wouldn't wanna be doing like the trench warfare style fighting you see over in the war in Ukraine with a gun like this, with how close they are, with how violent those engagements are, with how like they're trying to suppress, keep heads down and move and clear trenches. I feel like a battle rifle in that instance wouldn't shine. If you are covering greater swaths of land with larger sight lines, then I think, okay, I would much rather have a battle rifle. Now, of course, guessing what kind of conflict awaits us in the future that the military-industrial complex will push us into is always a massive what if.
我在北京
The what if simulator, you get the gist by now. I kind of bet that they will get into those conflicts and realize that they want some M4s back. And they may still also want that XM157 optic. So they're like, all right, let's go back to the M4, but let's keep the optic because this is great to use. That's kind of like how I see it. May not play out that way, it may play out that way. Who knows? Now, if that's the case, what I do think will happen is that this thing gets pushed into a pretty sick DMR hybrid role where, say, it's not as sexy as a dedicated DMR, but you can also use it like a battle rifle. So they can augment them in their, fighting elements, whether you have, say, some guys in your platoon that all have the MCX SPEARs, and then everyone else has like an M4, so they can carry more ammo and keep heads down longer, while those guys with spears are kind of expected to cover out to distances at further ranges for those kind of threats. That's kind of my guess. Could be wrong, could be right. If we fast forward in the future, we'll see how well this video ages. So if we're playing the hypothetical war game, say platoon on platoon, a platoon of US infantry armed with their next gen squad weapons, you got the XM250, you got their MCX SPEARs, and there's no other elements in play, no air support, no artillery that those troops can call in, and I'm the bad guy commander, and I all have intermediate weapons. It's like, okay, I guess if it's just platoon on platoon, then I would have my guys with more ammo just overwhelm them with superior firepower, kind of keeping their heads down. Of course, this all, I guess, would depend on getting within their range of dominance, so you kind of have to close that gap a bit. That's kind of like how I would see it, right? Yet again, dude on the internet, grain of salt. I'm hoping the eggheads that think about all this stuff kind of have that accounted for, so is what it is. How's it sounding?
As far as I can tell, it sounds good.
It's a lot of spitballing, but I have my thoughts. I'm my own person. Am I a little retarded? Sure, but aren't we all, fella? What seems to be the cream of the crop of that program would be the optic itself and the new belt fed that they selected. The XM250 looks gangbusters. Going back to, I have not seen it in the flesh and I have not shot it, but the stats of it being like 14.5 pounds with the optic, and I'm not sure if that's accounting the linked ammo, that's a wicked light belt fed machine gun. That's a medium machine gun in theory, right? That's crazy. Compared to the M240 Bravo, which is a big old pig of a gun, that's a very lightweight weapon system. And then if you pair that with that AP ammo, that thing is gonna absolutely just like Elysium melt people when it gets in their cone of fire. Like, that's terrifying. Now, obviously the military has a vested interest in this thing, but how does that apply to you, the individual firearms user, in whatever country you may reside? Statistically speaking, most of us are here in the United States. Well, it's a good question. In the research I did, and looking at my peers' work on the topic, so make sure I can try and have as fresh of a take as possible, I came across Henry of 9 Hole Reviews, and I kind of agree with him. He said, as a civilian rifle, it's not that good. Even in 7.62x51, I feel like you have so many other options that are even more fleshed out by now that do a lot better. Now, I know some of you guys aren't big SCAR 17 guys, but of my battle rifles of the modern era, I do kind of start to rate that one as one of my favorites. The gun's super lightweight, feels way more well balanced than this thing. There's also plenty of 7.62x51 floating around in comparison to 6.8 or 277 Fury. I keep saying that, I don't know why. She do look good, man. She really does look good on camera. It's all propaganda. They needed a gun that looked cooler than the M4, maybe. I think if you're on the civilian market and you're looking for a battle rifle, I would probably hold off on going the SIG MCX SPEAR route for a while. The biggest benefit of that platform is probably going to be that 6.8, and of that benefit, I would say it comes down to that AP ammo. If the AP ammo works as good as I have heard, then that thing is pretty sick. Now, if it's just in 7.62x51, it feels like there's already a bunch of rifles that have been way more fleshed out by now. You can kind of pick your poison of different styles of gas operating systems and other brands. And SIG, especially now, has no shortage of PR stuff and or things to overcome, in the sense where the common saying is that SIG kind of beta tests their end product on the users and then they kind of fix it down the line. So that could also be another thing to look out for. Personally, if I didn't work with Modern Warriors on getting this gun on the channel, I don't know if I ever would have snagged it myself. Like, I think it's cool, but to go out of my way to get it, especially chambered in the expensive round that it is, like the video round count wasn't high. Badlands Ammo, the ammo sponsor of the channel, awesome Arizona local guys that I shoot with and train with all the time, they want to equip me with ammo. They're awesome. I like them. Yeah, that was an ammo plug. They got me some 277 Fury to use too. So that being said, it was more so like not necessarily a burn down range session, but ammo is still crazy expensive, and equipping yourself with a good loadout and a good stockpile of ammo would just be astronomically high compared to what you could get if you just went with the 7.62x51 battle rifle route. And especially as a civilian, if you don't have a bunch of that AP ammo on deck, how much more worth it is that 6.8 ammo to you. Sure, like maybe ballistically that round can edge out 7.62 in certain margins and maybe even crush it in other margins, but that being said, there are also other cartridges like 6.5 Creedmoor that can outperform, say, 7.62x51 out to certain distances where it's like the ballistic coefficient, or say like where the round starts to go transonic, and all, you know, all the nerds that nerd out about that kind of stuff can just talk your ears off about it forever, but you get the idea. Like there's other rounds you could look into that will still be more affordable than trying to probably dump a bunch of ammo into 6.8 for now, right? This all could change down the road as ammo becomes way more prevalent, but it's also really hard to beat 5.56 for this instance, for most use cases for civilians. That being said, if there was a home invasion and you schwacked your home invader and or invaders with a 6.8 round out of a SIG SPEAR MCX, that would be one of the funniest memes in a bit. That would go crazy. Maybe using that AP 6.8 round in their home defense in an apartment complex is not the best idea. Round accountability, fellas, do you speak it?
Overall, gentlemen, I will say I am excited about the gun. I think it's cool to see new weapons platforms come about. I think it's cool to see new cartridges kind of take the stage. But the cynic in me thinks it's going to be like another shortest lived service rifle like the M14. There it is, I guess. I got nothing else for you. Godspeed.
There's always money in the banana stand.